بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. My respected brothers and sisters, we find ourselves in Juz 25 and 26 of the Holy Quran. So we're approaching the end. And actually, interestingly, in the commentary of the Quran, particularly those that are thematically oriented, you find a lot of the scholars love the short surahs. Why? Because as the surahs get shorter, in our imperfect human effort, even scholars that have amassed great knowledge about the Quran, it is often easier for them to pick out the central themes of a surah and see the connections between surahs as the surahs get shorter. So you'll find many scholars, they have very fascinating commentary and love of these short surahs that we're approaching. We'll be taking many more surahs in our sessions, but the number of pages is about the same since the surahs are shorter. I also want to mention, don't think that any true scholar would have the audacity to claim to have the last word about the Quran or to know the absolute answer. Actually, in the really powerful tafsir, you find the opposite. One that comes to mind in the Shade of the Quran by Sayyid Qutb, you'll see actually in the first printing of the book, he comments in a verse about Surat Al-Baqarah, and he loves commenting about the placement and wisdom of order of verses. And he very openly says, he calls Allah as his witness that he has expended effort and researched and tried to understand the wisdom, the divine wisdom in placing this ayah. And he says, it was not opened for me, that he didn't know. And he actually asked the readers of the tafsir if any of them have knowledge or Allah opens for them to get in contact with him. And then in later printings, actually, you see the difference. He added new commentary based on the changing in research. So in a typical scholarly paper, it would be, this would be a mark of shame. You're admitting you don't know. But in true scholarship of Islam, this is true scholarship, to understand that we have not been given from knowledge except for a little bit. And these are all just minor, reflections from the commentary of scholars. Now, we are among a set of 7 chapters that are called Ha-Mim. There are 7 chapters that all begin with the letters of the Arabic alphabet, Ha-Mim. And they actually have many commonalities between them. Each surah mentions the magnificence and the power and the clarity of this scripture, the Holy Quran. And each surah mentions the story of Musa and Bani Israel, the Israelites, who were the last major nation that were given the responsibility of carrying this divine message and carrying the responsibility for this earth. And each surah now also speaks about the transition of this responsibility from the Israelites, from the children of Jacob, to the ummah of Mohamed sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And last time we spoke about one of these surahs, Surat Ghafir, and today we'll take several and then complete tomorrow, inshallah. But the next one in this series is Surat Fussilat, which means to explain thoroughly or to expound. So it's the revelation well explained, well expounded upon. And Surat Fussilat, very interestingly, talks about addressing the Arabs. It says, if this Quran was revealed in other than the Arabic language, they would have said, if only its verses would be clearly explained. That this is something foreign and unknown to us. And the surah actually, in addition to emphasizing that the Quran is utterly clear and an absolute guidance for those who want to seek and understand, it teaches us something really important. That guidance and being from the specially chosen is not gotten by being born into the chosen people, or being in a bloodline, or even being Arab by ethnicity. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ teaches us that the Arab in the understanding of Islam is the one who understands and learns the Arabic language. So we learn from this surah actually that there are people, and this has happened historically, continues to happen today, that there are people from Persia, from Southern and Southeast Asia, from America, from Africa, from Europe, that practice Islam better and serve this Quran much more than people from the heart of Arabia or people even from the city of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And also I say without reservation that there are people that bear the names Muhammad and Aisha and Ali and Fatima, or perhaps even are from the bloodline of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. And on the last day, they may be further away from him, from a person that was related to the Pharaoh or carries the blood of the Pharaoh in his veins. It comes down to their practice, and with regards to understanding of the Quran, it comes down to the effort and understanding, implementation and action upon these verses. So this is very important, and this is why no believer can ever claim absolute salvation for themselves. Because ultimately, we have no guarantee until we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know what actions lead to Jannah and salvation, but we do not know that Allah has accepted from us. Surat Fussilat is very important because so many of us today in our pop culture notions of religion is given a bad name because it's treated like an elitist club. That if I just wear this clothes, if I just speak this language, if I just act in this manner, if I have superficial looks about me that suggest I'm religious, this is religiosity. And Surat Fussilat speaks against this, and that message continues in a couple of chapters that are coming momentarily. Next is Surat Az-Shura, which means the consultation. And this is one of the surahs that has a very interesting distinction in the language it uses. It uses two words that indicate difference. One is the word and the derivatives of the word ikhtilaf, which means to differ. And many of you may have heard the usage of this in the Arabic language, for example, the difference among the scholars. But the other one it uses is at-tafarruq, which means disunity. And the surah uses al-ikhtilaf not necessarily in the negative. In fact, it instructs us when we differ, how to behave with that difference. And from that comes the namesake of the chapter, as we'll see momentarily. But it uses the word tafarruq, disunity, negatively. And it says, do not commit tafarruq. Do not have disunity and this type of difference amongst you. And Surah Az-Shura teaches us how to deal with differences. Because differences are a part of human existence. Not only in our opinions, in our dispositions, in our behaviors, but Allah actually created us with differences innately. Created us from different nationalities, different ethnicities, different tongues, different dispositions, different genders, different ages, different generations. And it's only natural that this will lead for us to have similarities in some regards and differences in others. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't treat these negatively. But the Quran talks about the negative outcome when this leads to disunity and dysfunction. And it speaks about one of the most powerful tools to combat this negative disunity, which is as-Shura, consultation. How many of our homes are in eager need of consultation? Even when we're teaching our young people that are preparing and desiring marriage. Many of us are eager to teach or learn all of the rights of marriage. What do I get? And what can the husband point at the wife and say, give me this? And what can the wife point at the husband and say, the Prophet ﷺ say, you give me this. But how many of us pause and ensure we're executing our responsibilities? How many can combine between the husband of the unit and wife and really have strong leadership in the house? So that there's this consultation and exchange, that the basis is that we reach consensus. We reach agreement through shura. But when there is a difference of opinion, it does not lead to difference in the hearts. And we know how to deal with that. How many of our masajid, how many of our communities start with differences among the board or arguments among the volunteers and end with youth and struggling Muslims who can find no service in that masjid and end up on the streets without a mosque or a center to pray in and find their needs. Surah Az-Shura is practical in that it knows we will differ, but it teaches us Don't let that difference lead to disunity. Next, we have Surat Az-Zukhruf, which means the ornament. And Surat Az-Zukhruf talks about not being enthralled and overwhelmed and amazed by outer appearances. And it's not just the name of the chapter, but actually even the examples of the chapter, so many of them connect to this bigger theme. Remember, the story of Musa and Pharaoh is following us throughout these chapters. I'm just not mentioning it in each one. But the words of Pharaoh in this chapter are very focused on getting credibility through this issue. He challenges Musa and he talks to his people. And what is his source of credibility, Pharaoh? He says, don't I have the dominion and power over Egypt and these rivers flowing beneath my feet? And he makes fun of Musa, not for his conduct or his message, but he makes fun of him for his speech and natural bodily functions that he has no control over. And then when he says, if we're going to believe Musa, what does he want? He wants fireworks. If only he had this sign and that descended from him on the heavens. Things that have nothing to do with the message and credibility, but of his mind and his desire is that this should have this outward appearance, this zukhruf. Surah Az-Zukhruf is teaching Muslims to be intelligent. Don't be caught up by outward appearance. Don't be caught up by just this hullabaloo and this media and all of this outward appearance, this decoration, this ornament. Actually, in this chapter comes the verse where one of the attacks of Quraysh is quoted against the Prophet ﷺ. They say, in translation, if only this revelation had descended upon one of the powerful men, of the two men from the two powerful cities, meaning Mecca and Taif. So again, the Prophet ﷺ, the best of character, the best of humanity, period, is criticized for what? Where's his power? Where's his authority? Why wasn't it revealed to a king or an emperor or this or that? And Surah Az-Zukhruf has a really powerful passage where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about if it weren't for the weakness of humanity, what He would give those that reject faith, those who commit kufr. And the description of the chapter, and this is where the name Az-Zukhruf comes from, speaks about a level of wealth and material comfort and houses and silver and decorations and ornament that the most powerful king, the richest emperor, this is what they dream about at night because they don't have it. And as the Prophet ﷺ says that this world does not carry the weight with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even the weight of a gnat's fly. Of a gnat's wing. Even this tiny weight, this world doesn't carry that weight with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Surah Az-Zukhruf re-emphasizes something we've been encountering many times in our recitation. That when Allah gives someone plenty in this world, it is no indication that He is pleased or displeased with him in the hereafter. And when Allah withholds from someone material comfort in this world, it is also no indication that He is pleased or displeased. So fittingly, the surah concludes with what our eyes should be fascinated with and what our hearts should be longing to. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leaves the power and the authority and the riches of the world and speaks about what? Speaks about not the decorations, but the true reward and the special return that He has prepared for His righteous servants in the hereafter. And He teaches the believers to not attach themselves to the outward appearance of success in this world, but to really long and desire and make dua and work very hard for an honorable return on the last day, the day when we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah that on that day we are brought forth with the prophets and the righteous, we are elevated to the highest levels of Jannah, that He accept us in Al-Firdaus Al-A'la, us and our families. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we not be deceived by this world, or its money, or its power, or its wealth. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He forgive us our shortcomings, and He save us from the fire, and He enter us into Al-Jannah. Allahumma ameen, ameen.